Coast and wildlife expert Tom Hurd said that bats are small but mighty creatures, and there's a huge amount we can learn from them.
You're talking about an animal that really, a chunky one might be 5 centimetres. It's a long way, and across the North Sea as well, it's incredible effort from such a small mammal. Bats are pretty hardy creatures, and I mean, here in the UK we have 18 species of bats, and apart from taking a bit of a break over winter, they've got to get out there. They've got to get out there and feed. So they can withstand a bit of wind, they can withstand a bit of rain, because they're just, they're so tough. They really are Olympians. If you watch bats in the wild, they are just going, fighting for it. Really, really tough competitors. So I'm sure that this particular bat just thought, what, Heathrow to Moscow? No problem, sunshine, and off it went. There's a huge amount that bats can teach us. For starters, it's only relatively recently that we recognise the Netherus as a different type of pipistrelle. And we used to think that they only came to the UK to feed, and they then went back to Europe. But we now know we have breeding colonies here in the southeast, so we're always learning more and more and more. And when you consider that bats really are top predators for flying insects, and flying insects themselves are an incredible indicator of environmental health and ecological health. You've got to have those little midges and those flies pollinating our seeds and our grasses and all that kind of stuff. They're an amazing keystone species, so knowing where they started, where they're going, and what they might encounter along the way gives us more opportunity to protect them, to look after them, and in doing so, get an idea of the current state and health of our own ecosystem.
That tiny little bat and her remarkable journey. Now, time for a look at the weather. Here's Thomas Schafflacker.
Hello. Well, there's not much change on the weather front for the rest of today and into tomorrow. On the weather front for the rest of today across the country, you can see on the latest satellite picture, gusty winds in places too. We've got scattered downpours across the UK, particularly northern parts of the country, and they are likely to continue into the evening hours and through Sunday and into Monday as well. So it's also quite a cool picture across the UK with this weather, this low pressure sitting on top of us, and it's a slow mover, meaning that it's only very gradually moving towards the east and the northeast. So the weather that it brings sits on top of the country for a considerable amount of time. So those are the morning temperatures. Through the afternoon, you can see the showers continuing, particularly, I think, heavy across northern parts of the UK. Maybe fewer showers for a time tomorrow in the south of Wales, Cornwall and Devon. Could get some decent sunshine there in Plymouth. Bye-bye.
Hello again, you're watching BBC News. I'm Sean Lay. The headlines this hour. Gold medal number 20 for Team GB as Joe Chun takes top spot in the men's modern pentathlon. There's a bronze for Josh Coe in the men's 1500 metres. It's Britain's first medal in the event since 1988. Boxing gold for Bilal Yafi as he wins in the flyweight division for Team GB. And the success in the pool too. Tom Daley earning bronze at the 10-metre platform diving, his second medals of this Olympic Games. In Afghanistan, the Taliban say they captured their second provincial capital in 24 hours. Britain and the United States have warned their citizens to leave Afghanistan immediately. And a volunteer firefighter has died as wildfires spread across Greece, with thousands being moved from their homes to the north of Athens. And this tiny bat beat records by flying more than 1,200 miles across Europe. Now, on BBC News, Click looks at how artificial intelligence could be used to help health services around the world.
This week, a special programme. Can artificial intelligence make healthcare better for all of us and save the NHS?
take a walk down towards the car, see what's going off. I'm going to take a walk round to my car, see what's happening. Still says we're connected. Well, it's not telling me whether we are. I mean, because it's showing up on here anyway. I mean, I've got no real way of knowing what I'm actually looking at. If it's connected or not connected, I'd have to play it back. Let's go and take a walk to the car and see what it looks like. Do with a steady cam. That's my car. Hello? Got audio. Can hear it echoing on the app. Take a walk back and see whether or not we've got any form of signal coming up on YouTube, or whether it's just this building that we're fucking about around here. And it's just no good for signal because it's such a data block here. Lovely tree there. Quick look around the neighbourhood.
Random parts of the image. It just guesses. It doesn't even know what it's guessing at. All it knows is when its guess is right and when it's wrong. And mostly, because it's guessing, it's going to get it wrong. And the great thing about computers is they can do this over and over again, really fast, and they remember everything. And every time it does accidentally get it right, it makes a connection to its previous correct guesses. With every right answer, certain connections get stronger. And with every wrong answer, others get weaker. Through this barrage of guesses, a network grows, similar to the human brain, which starts to distinguish between right and wrong. A digital thought process that we call a neural network. Until eventually, after a multitude of attempts, it has very few failures and a lot of success.
Okay, let's try some more difficult scans now.
So if you just take your gown off, Andy.
And this is the technique that could help to relieve the pressure on the UK's breast screening service. Almost 1,000 women die from breast cancer in the UK every month. The aim is to catch the disease early when it's most treatable, but that means that more than 2 million women have their breasts scanned for potential cancer every year.
My entire role is clinical diagnostics within breast. You know, it takes up a great deal of my life. It's really important, and we're kind of fighting a big fight.
Bernadette works at the Lincolnshire Breast Screening Service, and she's part of a shrinking workforce. For years, the NHS has been unable to train or even recruit enough radiologists, and many services now face chronic staff shortages. This is further complicated by the fact that each mammogram needs to be read independently by at least 2 specialist clinicians.
So we have 2 people reading a mammogram because actually it's a really difficult process, okay? What we're looking for is tiny, tiny cancers. Maybe, 2 millimetres. Maybe a little tiny smudge within a breast. And we're human, and some of us miss them. So that second read is that second opportunity to pick up that tiny little smudge that may, change a woman's life.
So, the Nottingham University Hospital has been trialling a new tool that may help. This is Mia, an AI trained to spot breast cancer. The aim of the project is for this system to be the second reader, potentially speeding up the whole process.
So Mia's had a look at this mammogram as well. Can we have a look at what Mia thinks?
So on this particular case, Mia has actually marked the area that I've also been concerned about, and it actually makes a callback decision itself. And you can see there that Mia says callback malignancy because it's suspicious.
Its makers, Chiron Medical, have been developing Mia for over 3 years. Here in Nottingham, Jonathan and his team have been testing Mia on the hospital's historical datasets. These are the scans from women who've been to this clinic in the past and were diagnosed by a human. The aim is to see if Mia would have made the same decisions.
So this time, Mia hasn't actually placed any mark on the image here, and its opinion is no recall is required. Now actually this lady did come back for some extra tests, and this well-defined mass, she had an ultrasound when she came back, and this was a cyst, a perfectly harmless cyst. So I suppose the recall would be a false positive. This lady didn't actually need to come back.
A false positive is when the reader thinks that there's cancer, but on further investigation it turns out that they were wrong. And over at the Cambridge Breast Unit, Professor Fiona Gilbert has been conducting research to try and reduce those false positives. Something that not only puts a lot of strain on the system, but also a lot of strain on the patients.
It obviously causes quite a lot of distress to the women being called back, and the majority of them turn out to be normal. It's a lot of work for us to be assessing all these women for a relatively small number of cancers.
And when a programme screens over 2 million people every year, these little percentages do matter. Every year, around 70,000 women are given a false positive result, and some never attend a screening again. Fiona and her team have been testing an AI built by Google Health to see how the software compares to human radiologists.
So in the retrospective study that was done, the algorithm performed better than some of the individual radiologists and worse than other of the radiologists. So when they took the average performance of all the radiologists, the algorithm would have called back fewer people.
But this research project is still in its early stages, and it's set to move to the next phase of development this year. In the meantime, back in Nottingham, Mia has finished its initial trials and will now be tested in 15 more NHS sites against ongoing cases to make sure that it works.
Artificial intelligence is the next amazing transformation. So that's what excites me, and it excites me that I don't know the full potential. We know that the cancers we're missing tend to be smaller, they tend to be more aggressive, and those are the ones that we want to find.
But as the pandemic hit, all of this had to stop.
And as breast clinics emptied out, elsewhere, the NHS was about to be overrun. The coronavirus pushed intensive care units beyond their limits. But even before the pandemic, these wards have been running at very near capacity. And it's here that one of the biggest killers in the UK, and indeed the world, lurks. It's called sepsis.
So sepsis is when there is a severe infection, and when the body's response to that severe infection leads to organ failure.
It can set in without warning and can affect anyone.
This is a lady in her early 50s. She stayed 4 with us on the unit. She's very unwell initially.
People are admitted to ICUs for many reasons, but sepsis tends to strike when patients are at their weakest.
We literally collect every heartbeat and every breath. When you first start in intensive care, when I started, it was difficult to see what was important because there was so much data.
But remember, computers love data and love spotting patterns in it. They don't get tired and they never stop. So, the doctors and computer scientists teamed up to create something called AI Clinician, an algorithm that can detect and even predict early signs of sepsis and then advise how to stop it.
What we've used is large databases with 20,000 patients, and then we tested it in another 80,000 patients. That's more than any doctor could see in their lifetime.
The trials were proving successful, but neither the AI nor the humans were ready for a new type of sepsis, one brought on by COVID-19.
There are a few differences. One is the intense inflammation they had in the lung made their oxygen levels really low, and so they needed high amounts of oxygen. They didn't tire of their breathing so quickly as many patients with other pneumonia often struggle with their breathing. We also saw things like a lot of blood clots, which we occasionally see in other sepsis, but were far more frequent in this disease.
Nearly all the patients coming through to ICU now had this new sepsis.
Looking good.
And for the AI, this was an illness it had never seen before, nor had any data on. And remember,
Looking good.
Computers learn to be good at one task doesn't mean
How loud is that?
a different one. The AI
Hello?
was back to square one.
Hello?
But the humans,
Back of the camera.
their idea was to gather
Front of the
data
camera.
from ICUs across the UK to create a database of treatments that worked. So the doctors
Right at the phone.
could learn from each other at speed and save their patients.
Facing the opposite way.
A picture of how disease was treated in real time on a daily basis across
Front of the camera.
You see all the diversity of all the different approaches people were trying.
Microphone's excellent.
What was not working.
Now this data will be used to retrain AI Clinician, and one day it may help to treat sepsis that's caused by...
Right, I'm going to wrap this one up.
So it's about 18 months since we started.
That's the end of the test for today.
Program, and in that time,
The new
we
Sony
started to use
CX
technology in new ways, and
250E.
some of that has included GP consultations.
That's passed the test.
over video call, for example. So I think
We can now get some
probably
accessories for it.
We'll be happy to accept medical help.
See you guys
from
again. Thanks for watching.
and computers in the future.
More tests
But
next week
for
on some
those
more
people to
equipment.
be good at their jobs, they're going
By
to
the way,
need
this was done with
a
USB
lot
cam through an
of
S10
a lot of our personal
using Speedify as bonding.
data.
Great thing, Speedify.
Many services like Instagram, Google,
Recommend
and
it to
Facebook
everybody.
don't charge us any money. Instead, they get to use our personal data.
Gonna end the stream now.
To work out how better to target us with ads. But for many of us, that seems like a fair exchange. They make our lives easier, and they connect us to the world. But now, those same companies which have been collecting and profiting from our personal data are moving into healthcare. Amazon, Microsoft and Google are all trying to grab a seat at the table and dine on our medical data. And the NHS has something unique to offer. A whole nation's information from birth to death.
something that might make one feel uncomfortable.
I don't think many health professionals sit down with their patients and say, do you want your data to be sold to Google or DeepMind? I don't think those kind of conversations are being had.
And we're not just talking about the big household tech names here either. Plenty of other companies that you never have heard of also want access too.
The issue of sale of data to technology companies is an interesting and controversial issue. There are some people who believe it's an asset to the NHS and we should sell it. There are other people who believe that in some way or other that's a wrong thing to do from a moral point of view.
But if we get it right, and it is a big if, the benefits could be huge. A unified, joined-up store of medical data could really speed up research and lead to new treatments. And AI would be used to look for the patterns hidden within. And that's something that could soon be helping those who are suffering from long COVID.
Thanks to artificial intelligence, we were able to link patient records with imaging and produce an analysis of 41,000 patients, imaging and clinical associations in about 2 months.
Adriana Rocca is part of a team that's been looking into why long COVID only affects some people.
What we found was quite important and shocking because it was actually not obesity per se, but fatty liver disease linked to obesity, what was increasing the risk actually up to 5 times of being severe with COVID-19.
Ajay Agadi is one of almost 1 million people suffering from long COVID in the UK. He's 40 and a doctor, and he moved to the UK from India to complete his specialist training.
So in the last week of March, I was on the weekend duties and I was not feeling well. I went back home immediately, I self-isolated and then I was tested positive. I wasn't thinking that this virus will affect me because I was a fit adult and I thought it would be just okay like any other flu viruses for me. There was a moment when I thought I will just die, and I had 3 years old, which I have not, and I will not be able to see her ever in my life.